Hello, everybody. It's Alex Caputo-Pearl, president of United Teachers Los Angeles. We want to welcome everyone here. We've got our educators, our UTLA members. We've got parents who are faithful watchers here. We've got students whom we love. We love our students. We love public education. So we want to welcome you all here. I'm gonna come back and talk about the agreement that has been reached between UTLA and LAUSD. I'm going to come back and talk about that. But before I do that, I want to have Arlene Inoue, who is the co-chair of our bargaining team, and our bargaining team just did incredible work over hours and hours and hours, over 30 hours over the last 3 days, and before that, a bunch more hours to get this agreement, which is good for students, good for our members, good for public education in this time of crisis of COVID-19. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to go through the whole agreement. But first, I want to bring Arlene Inoue on, who has just done fantastic work, and our bargaining team has done fantastic work. So, Arlene Inoue.
Greetings. I'm so glad you could join us and that I could join you here in shelter at home. I don't have some cool baskets behind me, but I got a pretty cool fake fireplace here. But it's good to greet all of you today. Together, we go through this difficult, unprecedented health and economic COVID-19 crisis. Your UTLA bargaining team, comprised of elected board of directors and officers representing the diversity of our members, have been hard at work at our virtual bargaining table. It's been 4 weeks since schools were closed. We lived through the shock of needing to provide instruction to support our learning, something we've never had to do before. And while juggling your own personal situation, we know some of you have your own children that you've been working late at night to get this done. Some of you have elderly parents. Some are really struggling with family and friends and are trying to help them. We know that many of you have anxiety about your own mental health needs. Some of you have loved ones who are essential workers, or maybe you have loved ones who aren't working or are having to go to work. And some of you don't have privacy or the technology for this job now. And we know many of you are also single parents trying to just juggle everything. Well, the bargaining team has carried all of your concerns, all of this with us into the bargaining table. We shared your stories, which are also our stories. We were very clear that there had to be flexibility, parameters on working time, on excessive PDs, pedagogical discretion for teachers, discretion for health and human service professionals, and no live video requirements. This was absolutely crucial to getting any agreement. And we also wanted it to be fair to students who we know are in an unequitable situation. And we know that you needed the technology, the equipment, the resources to do this job. We also, in this tentative agreement, memorandum of understanding, or an MOU, we also put everything in writing that we had formally agreed to, which includes pay, full pay, your benefits, and a base pay for substitutes, and many, many other things, which Alex will go into detail. Public education changed overnight. We heard your concerns, and your concerns are also our concerns. Your stories was what we brought to the bargaining table. And our common experience gave us unity and it gave us power so that we could stand strong, united, and hold the line on what we needed for this bargaining agreement. So before I turn it over to Alex, I want to be sure to introduce the bargaining team members who made this a priority of our lives, especially the last week. And I got to tell you, it did bring flashbacks back to me of when we were at City Hall bargaining during the strike. But instead of being together, we were at home looking at our computer screens. But this time, our bargaining team I just want to give a shout out to them. It's from the Valley East, Victoria Casas from Beachy Elementary School, Valley West, Javier Romo, Mulholland Middle School, East Area, Adrian Tamayo, Lorena Elementary, South, Cynthia Matthews, McKinley Elementary, from the Harbor, Jennifer McAfee, Dodson Middle School, our West Area Chair, Erica Jones, and our special category representative, Matthew Cogan, for adult education. We also have Julie Van Winkle, our North Area Chair and Secondary Vice President-elect, Gloria Martinez, our Elementary Vice President-elect, and my co-chair, Jeff Good. And I also want to give recognition to our president, Alex Caputo Pearl, who was instrumental in getting this agreement, along with Stephanie Meyer Cruz, our president-elect, all UTLA off direct. We truly are in this together. And now I want to have Alex take us through. This is a temporary agreement until June 30th, 2020, or when schools open, whichever comes first. And we will be bargaining again. We had to get a basic agreement with essential issues so that you could go back on Monday. But after that, we will be able to open up bargaining again on the impact and effects of COVID-19 during the school closure. So Alex, walk us through this now.
All right. Thank you very much, Arlene Inoue. That's our great bargaining co-chair. Thank you very much, Arlene. I also want to recognize Jamila, who is here doing interpretation for us. Jamila is great, works with Justin. They're really a fantastic
I'll see it later.
Group of folks who are supporting us. I am here in the Caputo Pearl household as usual. Got the usual clutter behind me. I'm a little bit, Jamila has a great background, so she's putting me to shame in that I've got clutter back here, and she's got her fantastic background, but we still love having her here. I hope you're having a great spring break. Our early ed folks, I hope you got a little bit of relaxation with a little bit of a diminished schedule. You deserve the break that you're getting. As usual, I want to just say that we love our members, our educators, our students, our parents who we work with. And this agreement that we've reached that I'm going to go through section by section is, remember, this is an agreement to manage a pandemic. It is not an agreement to replace public education brick and mortar buildings that we go to and share collective experiences at. This is not meant to replace that. Nothing can replace that. This is an agreement to manage a pandemic and do the best that we can. I want to just say again, recognize again our bargaining team, and I'll just mention them again. I know that Arlene did, but I really want to give them a shout out. And first, I'm going to show you a picture of them. This is how bargaining happens in shelter in place. This is so that's our bargaining team in the Zoom. Actually, I hope you can see all of them. I hope you can see all of them, all of our great bargaining team. And just to recognize them again, Jennifer McAfee, Cynthia Matthews, Tomas Flores, Julie Van Winkle, Adrian Tamayo, Erica Jones, Victoria Casas, Javi Romo, Arlene Inoue, Gloria Martinez, Jeff Good. Really fantastic work on the part of the bargaining team. So remember, another piece of this agreement is we need an agreement that focuses on humanity and on the main things that we're supposed to be doing in this time. We need to focus on our students. We need to focus on our students' families. We need to focus on our families in shelter in place in an unprecedented pandemic. Teachers are also leaders in our communities. Some of us are taking care of other people in our communities. And we also need to focus on ourselves to make sure we remain healthy for all the people depending on us. This agreement tries to get at that human aspect. We did a show last week about how we would not be taking onerous directives from principals or local district superintendents who are trying to go out and act on their own. This agreement also takes that on. We drew a line, and this agreement supports us in drawing that line. We also know that this takes place in a larger context. We are, after this Facebook Live, I'm going to be on a call with other statewide unions or other local teachers unions across the state in the California Alliance for Community Schools, where we're getting ready to collectively push back if and when the state of California said that they're going to try to do budget cuts and take us back to 2008 with furlough days, losing colleagues, cuts to programs, etc. So we know that's part of the context. We're part of coalitions that are supporting renters, where we know that rent has to be canceled, not just delayed. We're also a part of youth coalitions and working with Students Deserve and other youth groups. All of this happens within the prism of racism and fighting for racial justice. We're learning that COVID-19 disproportionately impacts African American folks. And a very cruel irony is that what Trump called the Chinese virus actually appears to have come to the United States from Europe, and yet you have a spike in anti-Asian type of hate crime. So we know that this happens through the prism of race and racism, and we're part of challenging that and fighting for racial justice and equality. So all of that is part of the context. What we did in terms of process on this, shout out like Arlene did. I worked very closely with the bargaining team, obviously, on this agreement, and Cecily Meyer-Cruz, our wonderful president-elect, who's coming in to the presidency of UTLA on July 1st. She and I worked side by side to make sure that as part of the transition of her coming in as our new great president, was being very involved in this bargaining. So kudos to Cecily as well. In terms of process, we took this through the board of directors. The board of directors of UTLA has voted unanimously to support this side letter. And we wanted to do that. The reason we chose to do that process-wise, you got this email to you last night. The board of directors met this morning and ratified it, but we wanted to make sure to get it out to all members last night so you could begin to read it. And process-wise, we took it through the board just because we knew that we have to get this in place quickly before you return back from spring break. So that's some of the framing. Now I want to get into actually walking through this. So hopefully you've got this up on your computer screen, the actual side letter, or you've printed it out so that we can look at it piece by piece here. So the first section, obviously there's the title. The first section basically just says that this agreement covers this academic year, okay? The state is recommending that schools be shut down for the rest of the academic year. My expectation is that that is going to happen, that schools will be shut down for the rest of the academic year. LAUSD has not made that official announcement yet, but that's what you should expect. That's what the first paragraph says. The second paragraph was very important just in terms of framing things, which is that this is a time when we've got to show flexibility, we've got to show resilience, but we've also got to show empathy. Empathy for students who have had their education disrupted, empathy for the parents of our students who are now struggling with maybe losing their job, maybe having their job, but also doing childcare at home. And empathy for our members. As Arlene said, many of whom are parents who have kids at home, some of whom are single parents, single mothers, and others taking care of things. So this is framed by empathy, resilience, and flexibility. the next section, which is under compensation and benefits. And the reason we're walking through this, and this will take a little while. It's not going to take forever, but I'm going to spend a good, half hour or so walking through this because we think our members need to know this. So looking at the compensation and benefits part, point number 1 under that says that there is no loss of pay and benefits to any UTLA bargaining unit member. So that includes all categories: nurses, HHS, educators, adult ed, all categories. No loss of pay and benefits during the school closure. Point 1 also makes clear that, sorry, let me check my text here. Making sure my setup is good. Point 1 also makes clear that all differentials will be paid for the rest of this school year. Those are big, obviously. Point number 2, auxiliary will continue to be paid as long as the duties are being fulfilled. So if I was teaching an auxiliary during my 5th period class, then I would, sorry. Hey Pablo, everything still good?
It seems like you have it on in the background. Can you turn off the background audio from Facebook Live? On a computer, maybe?
Hold on 1 second. Auxiliary will continue to be paid as long as the duties are being fulfilled. So if I was teaching an auxiliary during my 5th period class, then I would. Sorry. No, I don't know what that is.
Okay, you're good. Go ahead. It seems like you have it on in the background. Can you turn You're good. The background and you're going to go live now. Go ahead.
Continuation for. Hold on 1 second. Okay.
You're good. Go ahead and go
picking up from where I left off.
Yep, perfect. So sorry about
We're starting over. Pick up where I left off or starting over?
You're good with that. And you're going to go live now. Go ahead.
Pick up where I left off or starting over?
Yes, go. Where you left off.
Okay. So picking up where I left off, sorry about that. So so if I have a 5th period auxiliary that I'm teaching, then I am continuing to do the distance learning with that 5th period class, and I'll be paid for the auxiliary. So that's point 2. Point 3, having to do with National Board Certified Teachers. We're so proud that LA has more National Board Certified Teachers than anywhere. So give it up for National Board Certified Teachers. They're going to continue to get, they'll be able to get their 7.5% differential for continuing to teach their classes for the rest of the year through distance learning. So that first 7.5% differential they will get through just continuing with their class through distance learning throughout the year. The second additional 7.5%, they will get prorated to the amount of hours of the 92 hours that they were able to complete up to March 13th. Okay, so if you completed 60 out of the 92 hours by March 13th, you'll be compensated for those 60 hours. Then those other 32 hours that you still need to do, you will get the opportunity to do those next academic year. So you're not losing anything. You'll just get the prorated amount this year for what you completed out of the 92 hours, and then have the opportunity to do the other hours next year. Okay, so that's National Board Certified Teachers. Section 4. This is basically just covering us that if the situation changes and some people are going back into work sites or school sites, then what this does is it says that if situation changes and that's happening, the district can still have people working from home who either fit into a vulnerable category or who just cannot, or who are sick, or who cannot work in a physical space of a work site or a school site. So that's just covering us for if the situation changes and some people are going back into work sites, that there are still folks who will be able to make sure are not having to do that. We're not seeing any indication of going back into the work sites, like I said, anytime this academic year. So don't worry about it, but it's important that we cover that. Number 5. So number 5 is saying that, and we're under the compensation and benefits part, point 5 on page 1. This is saying that any bargaining unit employees who are ill due to COVID-19 or who are exposed to COVID-19, they'll be allowed to remain at home with no loss of pay and benefits and with no deductions from their sick, personal, or extended illness leave. Okay? So again, that's if things change and people are going back into work sites, this will cover you for being allowed to remain at home with no loss of pay and benefits, no deduction from members' sick, personal, or extended illness time. Okay? Also, the district can assign bargaining unit employees who are self-quarantining due to exposure to COVID, but who are not ill. They can assign those folks to work at home. So 4 and 5 are really to cover us if things change, to make sure that people are not losing pay, benefits, or sick time or other things like that. Point 6, under compensation and benefits. Just 1 second. So point 6, under compensation and benefits. If you're on leave, if you're on some sort of statutory leave and you're coming back, this allows you to do so, to come back from that leave into the distance learning framework. It also, the provision 6 also allows, if you were already at home, let's say if you had injured your back, if you were already at home and not able to work, but you want to work, and now you can through the distance learning framework, it allows you to come back into work that way. So number 6 is for people who were either on leave and who are coming back into distance learning, or who were already at home and coming into distance learning. It allows for that to happen, okay? Obviously, the member would have to go through the normal process of returning from a leave. Okay, point 7 on compensation and benefits. This has to do with substitute educators. As you know, we have spent countless hours fighting for substitutes, and we've got, frankly, the best agreement in the United States for substitute educators, which we are very, very proud of. And the district has done good work on this. We got to give credit to the district on this overall side letter and on the substitutes part in particular. So let's look at 7A, B, and C. 7A, B, and C basically enshrine into the legal side letter, the MOU side letter, you can call it either one. It enshrines into that, A, that substitutes will be paid based on their current work year pattern, but not less than, no one will be paid less than 3 hours. They'll be paid based on 3 to 6 hours per day. Okay, but no one will be paid less than 3 hours per day, which is an amazing floor that we have in terms of like a guaranteed basic income for substitutes. Best agreement in the United States on that. 7B enshrines the part of the March memo that we already got for substitutes. It enshrines that if you had assignments on the Smart Find Express system prior to the district closure, then you'd be paid for that or your current work year pattern, whichever one is greater. So that gives opportunities for even more than your current work year pattern in terms of pay. 7C, substitutes in long-term assignments who are currently earning extended rate will get to continue to receive that extended rate during the district closure. An amazing victory in that March memo that is also enshrined here. That's 7A, B, and C. 7D, this basically says that since substitutes are being paid during the closure, they could be called to work different assignments, which makes sense because they're being paid. That's 7D. Of course, we would protect their rights in whatever work they're doing, just like we protect all members' rights. So that's what 7D is. 7E is, and there's been some confusion about this, so I want to be very clear about this. 7E says that substitutes that are currently enrolled will maintain their health benefits to the end of the plan year, which ends August 31st. Now, there's been some confusion about this, so let me make it clear. The eligibility, substitutes become eligible for health care by having those 100 days, okay? Their eligibility is for a school year. It is for an academic year. So even if your plan says that the plan year is January to December, substitutes are only eligible for the academic year, okay? So what this agreement does is it actually extends more months. The academic year is only, as you know, up into June. By extending that to August 31st, it covers into the next academic year where substitutes are covered by healthcare, okay? Again, this is based on eligibility for that plan. It's not based on a healthcare plan saying, oh yeah, we're January to December. Doesn't matter whether the plan says they're January to December. Substitutes are only eligible for it for the academic year up through June. This is a victory because it extends it to August 31st, okay? Another couple months past the end of the academic year. The other thing this agreement does is substitutes remain eligible for health care by working 1 day the previous month. So if I got my 100 days last year, which made me eligible for health care this year, I still have to work 1 day per month to be able to be eligible for health care the following month. What this agreement also does is it takes that away. It basically says, since all subs are being paid, they're on paid status because of the agreement we got on the current work year pattern, they're considered to be working that 1 day per month. And so the healthcare for all the substitutes who are eligible through that 100 days last year, they continue with their healthcare without having to report to a work site, 1 day per month, and it extends through August 31st. Huge, huge victory. Now, one of the next steps with substitutes, which is not in here yet, and we're going to go back into more bargaining with the district on this and other items, is we've got to take care of healthcare next year. So the next agreement that we will get, and we're going to go back into bargaining soon, will be to make sure that that 100-day threshold is adjusted to make sure that substitutes who would have made that 100 days get their health care next year, okay? That's something that we're going to be taking on next. So lots of good things for substitutes here. Let me get a drink of water. All right. How we doing here? Hanging in there? Everybody good? All right. You really get to examine my clutter now and the baskets. So let's move to the next section. The next section is evaluations, okay? If everything was done on an evaluation that your administrator was doing of you, if everything was completed prior to March 13th, then the administrator will issue that evaluation. If it was not done by March 13th, if all steps in the process were not done by March 13th, then you will be put on the list of folks to be evaluated next year. You would not get an evaluation this year. You would be put on the list to be evaluated next year. Now, there is a clause in here that says, unless mutually agreed otherwise. So your administrator might say, hey, I didn't finish the process, but I came in and I saw you were doing great work. Let's mutually agree that I don't need to evaluate you next year. That could happen through mutual agreement of the educator and the administrator. We also have in our regular contract, our normal contract, that you can get waivers. If you're a permanent employee, you can get waivers for a few years from being evaluated. So that you might mutually agree on that, hey, I started the evaluation process, but we're good. I'm going to let you have the waiver so that we don't have to do it for a few years. So that's on evaluations. Again, if everything was done by March 13th, then the administrator will issue the evaluation. If not, you're on the list for next year unless mutually agreed otherwise. Okay? Disaster service worker status. So I'm on page 2. I'm a little bit below the middle of the page. So disaster service worker status. This has very rarely happened in the history of California. So it's likely not something that we're going to have to worry about. However, if our members, through the emergency powers of the state, of the city, of the school district, if our members are called into work based on the emergency powers of one of those public entities, what this clause does is it gives us the right to immediately bargain on what the working conditions of those disaster workers would be. We would get to bargain over their working conditions, okay? So for example, there's a nurse shortage and healthcare worker shortage. If our nurses in our bargaining unit are called by the emergency powers of a public entity into service, we would get to immediately bargain what the conditions of that would be. Now, if we couldn't come to an agreement on working conditions, the district would have the ultimate authority, the ultimate discretion to make those working conditions. But what this does, very important, is that it allows us to bargain those working conditions. Again, this is very unlikely to happen, has happened very rarely in the history of California, but we have it in there in case we need it. Okay, bottom of page 2. So here we're getting into the meaty stuff regarding distance learning and remote work. Okay, so point number 1 under distance learning and remote work, and I'm turning over to page 3 now. This is basically defining what distance work is, distance learning, and remote work, okay? And it makes very clear that live video is encouraged, but it is not mandatory, okay? This was a big issue for us. We had members, many of our members are already using live video, but we didn't want to make it an absolute mandatory requirement because we wanted to leave the pedagogical discretion to the professionals, to educators. You know what you're doing with your students. We love you, we support you, and having pedagogical discretion is important. So live video is encouraged, but not mandatory, okay? We had heard from many members that they're doing distance learning in other ways, through emails, through phone calls, through check-ins with families, but not with live video. Sometimes through recorded things, things like that. So that's a very big one in terms of pedagogical discretion and no mandatory live video. Number 2, and by the way, part of the reason we're doing that is that we reject a one-size-fits-all approach. Education is about individual students, and it's about individual teachers doing their best without a one-size-fits-all and creating a collective common good. Number 2, under distance learning, all state and required teacher-administered district assessments scheduled after March 13th have been suspended. So this is not just what Governor Newsom said is suspended in terms of state testing. It's also district standardized testing that was administered by teachers has been suspended for the year, okay? This is big. That's a big deal, that you're not going to have to worry about those testing and assessments that you normally do. Can you imagine what it would look like under these circumstances? So number 2 is big. Now, number 3, this is about meetings. Remember that we had some administrators that were calling for way too many meetings. And, you know, our members are, like I said at the beginning, our members are awesome. Our members are going above and beyond. Teachers, educators, health and human service professionals. And we need to spend time on planning and on grading and on students and on our own families and on our own health and on our own community's health. We don't need meaningless meetings called by administrators. Number 3 addresses that. it says that there can be one meeting per week. Your administration can call for one meeting per week for a length of 1 hour per meeting, and it has to happen within the contractual workday, okay? And that would be inclusive of a faculty meeting, a grade level meeting, or a department meeting. If your administrator wants you to have a meeting, they'd have to choose one of those. They can't do 1 hour faculty meeting, 1 hour grade level meeting, 1 hour department meeting. No, it's 1 hour per week of meetings called by administration, and it's just 1 hour. Has to be during the contractual workday. Okay, so that's very, very important in terms of pedagogical discretion. Number four allows you to request equipment if you need equipment. If you're not able to do distance learning because you don't have the equipment from your administrator. Number 5, and I'm on page 3. We're on the distance learning and remote work section here. We're walking through this. We're going to be done soon, but I wanted to go through all of this at once so that people really understand it, because we got to use this to make sure that it's being followed by administrations at school sites. Okay, number 5. On average, unit members, that's us, that's all, everybody within UTLA. On average, unit members shall provide 240 minutes of instruction and student support to students per day. The 240 minutes shall be inclusive of planning, office hours, required professional development, faculty department, grade level meetings, grading would fit into this, planning, all that sort of stuff. So you should, each day, when you look at the course of a week, you should make sure that it averages out over the course of 1 week to 240 minutes per day, 4 hours per day of the work that you're doing. And that's not just screen time with students. It's inclusive of planning, it's inclusive of grading, it's inclusive of the other stuff. And we know that the vast majority of our members are doing way more than the average of 240 minutes per day. We know that. That's what educators do. You're awesome. You're incredible. You're overachievers. You want your students to succeed. We know that. But what we wanted to do here was make sure that in a crisis situation, there is flexibility for you to take care of your family, to take care of your elder, to take care of somebody who might be sick, to take care of your child, and do the work in a flexible way, okay? So that 240 minutes is absolutely crucial. And this gets to that humanity issue, right? Life happens, right? Some of you may need to set a certain schedule in a certain way of how you do your average of 4 hours per day over the course of a week. You can stretch that out over the course of a day. You can do some here, some there. That's up to you, okay? This is about flexibility and humanity. Humanity for our students, humanity for our families, humanity for us. Number 6. This is related. Number 6. This basically goes into, we know that we've got to offer a predictable schedule. We love our students. We want our students to succeed. So we've got to offer a predictable schedule for students, for parents, to our colleagues, our coworkers, right? I don't want to be setting my weekly schedule in a way where it conflicts with something that one of my coworkers is doing with some of the same students, okay? So it makes sense for us to have a schedule for students, for parents, and for us, for our coworkers. So what number 6 says is that you will make sure that teachers will create, share, and follow a regular weekly schedule of instruction, student support, and 3 office hours per week. So that's inclusive of the office hours. And remember, that 240 minutes is inclusive of the planning, the office hours, etc. Number 6 is saying that you will create that and you will make that known to students, make your schedule known to parents, make that schedule known to your colleagues, okay? If that's going to change. Now, you don't have to show this to your administrator all the time. If your administrator keeps on coming to you and bothering you about your schedule, make your schedule once and say, here's my schedule for the week. This is how I'm going to do things. And then just make it known to parents, students, your administration, etc. And then make sure to let folks know if it changes. Obviously, let them know in advance if your schedule changes. But just putting it out there so that it's a predictable weekly schedule is fine, okay? So that's about scheduling. And again, you've got some flexibility here, right? If you need to do a couple hours in the morning and then you need some time to take care of your family, and then you're going to do more, into the afternoon, that's fine. You set it up, just make it predictable and share it for parents, students, and your colleagues, okay? Number 7, this has been a big bone of contention, right? You all have been struggling with these professional developments. Let me get a drink of water here. We're going through a lot of stuff here. We're almost done. Only about 10 more minutes here, but we want to make sure you know this. So give me 1 second to get some more water. Okay. You were also treated to the sound that my refrigerator makes. I think I mentioned this a couple weeks ago on one of these. How many of you all, could we have a show of hands of how many people have refrigerators that make really strange noises? Ours does, about once every 20 minutes. You were just treated to that. So professional development. What this does is so the professional developments that are already on the docket that I know people are struggling with, and we've heard about this, and we empathize with you. Those do need to be completed. The district would like them completed by April 17th, okay? Remember, they said April 2nd, and then we extended it so that it went to April 17th to get those 4 professional developments done, right? That still stands. Now, let me say this about that. If technical issues and connectivity issues and problematic issues continue to arise and surface about those 4 professional developments that are supposed to be done by April 17th, it's 5 if you count that first one. If technical problems and connectivity issues and all that keep on coming up, then we're going to obviously say to the district, it's not possible for people to finish them by April 17th. It needs to be extended further. But those are still on your docket. Those ones that you already knew about, those are still on your docket. What number 7 does is it limits what can be done beyond that, beyond those 5. So number 7 says that any more professional development would have to happen in April, okay? May and June, not going to have professional developments. They would have to happen in April, and they would have to be related to distance learning and use of technology. Doing other professional developments in this time period is ridiculous. So it puts 2 guardrails on them there, and it says that any professional development can be no longer than 1 hour, okay? And it must take place, if it's going to happen, it must take place during a faculty, department, or grade level meeting, okay? And it would have to fall within your 240 minutes, okay? So there's a bunch of guardrails on additional professional development. Again, I know it's a pain. Those first 5 that you've had to do and that they're saying they want by April 17th, I get it. That's a pain. We couldn't do anything about that because those were already in motion. What this does is it sets up guardrails for anything else that they want to do in terms of professional development. So just to review, it would have to be in April and April only. If they want to put something on top of those other 5 PDs, it would have to be in April. It must have something to do with distance learning or use of technology. 3rd, it could only be 1 hour long. 4th, it would have to be in place of a faculty, department, or grade level meeting. And 5th, it would have to be within your 240 minutes average per day. Those are pretty good guardrails on making sure that we don't have more professional developments that are not useful, okay? So good steps forward on professional development. Number 8, self-explanatory. Obviously, we're getting captioning and ASL interpretation for any professional development in meetings that happens on video. Number 9 is, again, this is not being contemplated by the district right now, so don't get stressed out about it. It's just sort of looking down the road, that if home visits are called for by the district, that they would have to happen voluntarily. Like, the district couldn't direct you that you have to do a home visit. They would have to happen voluntarily. Okay. So that may be coming, right? And some of our health and human service professionals do want to be involved in that kind of thing, obviously carefully with social distancing and shelter in place and all of that. But any home visits would have to happen voluntarily only. Okay. Let's see. Number 10. Okay. Number 10 basically says that if a UTLA member becomes unable to perform their duties because they have an extended illness, this is not just if you're sick for a couple of days. This is if there's an extended illness and you're not able to perform duties, then the district is going to make a plan to cover that person, and that would include a long-term substitute. Remember, we said that all of our substitutes are being paid. Best agreement in the United States on that. So a long-term substitute would come in if there were an extended illness for one of our members. And what number 10 does, and I'm flipping over to page 4 now, is it also makes sure that substitute would be trained and would get the opportunity to request equipment that is appropriate. Okay? So big deal on that's another good thing for substitutes. Number 11, I'm on page 4 now. This is about grading. So punchlines on grading, students are to be held harmless. We can't have students get a lower grade than what they were earning on March 13th when the schools closed. That wouldn't be fair. This is a lot of youth groups like Students Deserve and others are really advocating around this, and we 100% agree with them, and we're glad it's in the agreement. Because schools closed, we cannot have students with lower grades after March 13th, just because they can't use distance learning or they need something about the human connection. We know that our students are different. They need different things. This is particularly important in Los Angeles. 85% of our students come from low-income homes. Many of these homes, you know this, I'm not telling you anything you don't know. Many of these homes only have one device, or they share devices, or they don't have internet connectivity, or the parents are working and scrambling for jobs, so they don't have help at home. It's simply not equitable to be able to lower a student's grade under those circumstances. So students will be held harmless. They cannot get a lower grade than what they had on March 13th when schools closed. It will be at a teacher's discretion to give a higher grade. If a teacher wants to give a higher grade because of participation that a student has been doing within distance learning, that is up to the teacher. So again, back to pedagogical discretion. We respect you. You're the ones who make these decisions. Okay? And then the other big thing on grading is that any changes in grading policy at the secondary level or the elementary school level will be done in consultation with UTLA. So LAUSD is not going to just move on grading, putting out a new memo on grading without consulting with UTLA. So that's a big deal. Okay, number 12. We're gonna fire through the rest of this. Number 12. Those of you who want to do live video, again, live video is not mandatory. And part of the reason live video is not mandatory, part of it's pedagogical discretion. We trust you. You know how to work with students. But part of it is also, there are some security concerns that have been raised. There have been some obscenities and profanity and some things that have been used in live video, and some just sort of privacy issues that some of our members, have not wanted to get involved in. So it's important that live video is not mandatory. We got that in this agreement. But we do know that many of our members are using live video. And so, if you want to experiment with it, reach out to a colleague who's using live video, and you may find that you really do want to use it. Number 12 says that if you are using live video, the district will provide trainings on that. Okay. So that's number 12. Very important trainings. Okay. We don't want people just flying by the seat of their pants without that kind of training. Okay. Number 13. This says that this would apply to itinerants. This would apply to health and human service workers. This would apply to early education workers. That the 240-minute average per day, that 4 hours average per day, applies to you as well. So all of those HHS, itinerants, early ed, etc., applies to you as well. Okay. And you would also create, share, and follow a regular weekly schedule. You would do that as well. And you would provide advance notification if your weekly schedule changes. Okay. And remember, those 240 minutes per day on average for you, this also for HHS, for example, Health and Human Services, this includes that's not just 4 hours solid of talking to students. You've got to do your own planning. You've got to do your own writing up of assessments and things like that. That 240 minutes average per day also includes that planning, writing assessments, doing the paperwork that's necessary, etc. Okay. And again, part of the reason we went for that average of 4 hours per day is that we know, for example, I know a teacher who is able to work a lot on Mondays and do even more than the 4 hours on a Monday. But then on Tuesday, that's when this teacher's partner works. And so the childcare duties are squarely on her for all of Tuesday. So there would be more work done on Monday, less work done on Tuesday for this person, and it would average out to 4 hours per day across the week. Okay. The second part of number 13 is that unit members with a contractual workday of less than 240 minutes per day already. For example, some of our adult education members, they're awesome. They're obviously working 2 or 3 different jobs, but some of them have never had a contractual workday that is, more than 4 hours per day. So obviously, we're not asking them to work more. If your contractual workday is less than 4 hours per day already, then that's what you would continue to work, is what your contractual workday is usually. Okay. Number 14, this gets into all of our great health and human services professionals. And remember, the mental health, social and emotional health is going to be we already know that it's critical, but think about how much more critical it's going to be during this crisis and then immediately when we go back to our schools after this crisis. We're going to have to invest in more PSA counselors, more psychiatric social workers, more school psychologists, more health and human services staffing. We're going to have to do that. We should not be investing permanently in distance learning. We should be investing permanently in more mental, social, and emotional health staffing. So number 14 makes clear that, again, all of these folks are 240 minutes average per day. Just like everybody else. They can do appointments with students. They can communicate with families, but they should do that only upon issuance of formal guidelines for one-on-one interactions from the district. Okay, so we're working with the district on that. Those are the guidelines you would use. Number 15 is the same for counselors. Okay, counselors will be able to do appointments, working with students, but again, waiting for an issuance of formal guidelines from the district on how to do that. Okay. And remember, that all falls in that same 240 minutes on average across the course of a week for counselors, health and human service, etc. Number 16 are great DIS providers. They're going to continue to provide support through distance learning. They can schedule appointments and also looking at issuance of formal guidelines from the district. Okay, so we're on the last page of this. Okay, we're almost done, but we put a priority on making sure members understand everything that's going on. Okay, because you're the ones who are going to have to implement this and make sure this is followed at your school site, of course, with support from us. Okay, so number 17. UTLA and LAUSD agreed to meet at the request of either party to address what's happening with English language learner students and deaf and hard of hearing students. Okay, there's a lot more to figure out on this, a lot more to figure out. And we just wanted to enshrine in this agreement. Remember, we wanted this agreement quickly. We wanted this quickly because we didn't want a Wild West framework to continue. So some things we know just take way too much more discussion, and that we're going to get to in the coming days, but we wanted to get this agreement quickly. So number 17 does the very important thing of guaranteeing that UTLA can request to meet, which we're going to do, obviously, about how best to support English language learner students and deaf and hard of hearing students. Okay. Number 18, this is the same thing, but with special education students, students with disabilities. Our students with disabilities, our special education students are so important to us. They're so important to us. And our members do such an incredible job, special education teachers and all of the staffing around them. There is a lot more to figure out on this. And frankly, we're being held up because Betsy DeVos at the federal level, a lot of special education is driven by the federal level. Betsy DeVos is dragging her feet on putting out guidance to help school districts right now. So we're a little bit hamstrung on some of these things. So what this does in 18 is that it gives us the right to meet with the district to figure out ongoing guidance from the state and the federal government on how we're going to support our special education students. Okay. Number 19, very important, resource specialist teachers and inclusion teachers. They're going to continue to, through distance learning, work with core content teachers and try to make sure that they adapt everything they can to the IEP of the student. Okay, these are wonderful people who are working with our wonderful students with disabilities. And number 19 just says that you continue the work with the core content teacher, of course, resource specialists and inclusion teachers, also 240 minutes on average per day, same thing. But making sure to look at the IEP and follow what the IEP is saying. Number 20, special education teachers. This is just a sort of recognition of the incredible work that our special education teachers do with our most vulnerable students. Gives a little bit of a description about that distance learning there. And then number 21 is also on special education, and a key question that has continuously come up, and we track your questions absolutely vigorously. Like, we spend hours of night without sleep making sure that we're following all of your questions. And one of the questions that has come up a lot is about what do we do about IEP timelines for updates, for rewrites on IEPs. There's no mechanism for that yet because we're waiting for that federal guidance, and Betsy DeVos is dragging her feet. So there's no mechanism to do that yet. We actually tried to push into this agreement that the idea that IEP teams could meet virtually and actually go through, timelines on IEPs, updates to IEPs, etc. We tried to get that in here, but frankly, the district pushed back on it, and it wasn't. And frankly, I understand why the district did. I mean, the district is worried about, in the complicated environment of special education, they're worried about, can we really get parents as involved as we need to, virtually, and through the distance, to do something as important as looking at IEP timelines for their child, rewrites, updates, etc. So 21 basically says that we are going to continue to work with the district on everything possible to apply federal guidelines as they come. They haven't come yet, and state guidelines to support our students with disabilities. Finally, we're finally at the end here. Gonna get one last drink of water. I promise this is my last one. Okay. So finally, we're on miscellaneous and other provisions on page 5. Last part. That number 1 there is just saying that the district is going to work with the county health departments on protecting employees, protecting our health. It also gets into privacy issues about people's health. That's good stuff. And the district is doing good work with the county health department on protecting employees. That next section is saying that the entire contract, the entirety of our contract, of our regular contract, it's up on the website, the 2019 through 2022 contract, all of it is in full effect except for what has been modified in this side letter. Everything else is in full effect, except for what has been modified in these ways in this side letter. So we keep on using our general contract. We use the side letter to make sure that things are going well for our students, our members, our families, in our virtual classrooms and virtual work sites. Okay. Final page. Last page here. This is non-precedent setting. Okay. It means that what's in here is not going to set a precedent. It's not going to live forever. This will expire on June 30th of 2020, at the end of June of this academic year, or upon the opening of schools, whichever comes first. Again, I don't think schools are reopening before June, so this would last through June 30th. You see the signatures on there, my signature and Jeff Good's signature. It has since been signed by the superintendent and the president of the LAUSD board, and our board of directors did vote unanimously to support this. That happened this morning after we got the tentative agreement out to you last night. I think we got it out to you at about 8 p.m. That's when we finalized things. So this has now been signed. This was just the version before they actually signed it. So I'm going to end with this, the way I always do. We love you. You're doing incredible work. Teachers, health and human service members, parents, students, our families, we're all part of public education. And public education is the driving force of things that are good in our society. So you're part of an incredible project here, and we love you. Remember, this agreement is not trying to replace brick and mortar schools. You can't replace brick and mortar schools and all of the interaction that happens there and the crucial things that happen for equity to make sure that all students, regardless of race, income, gender, et cetera, have equitable opportunities. You need brick and mortar physical schools to do that. This is not trying to change that. This is just trying to manage a pandemic, okay? We're doing it with flexibility, with resilience, and with empathy, which is talked about in here. And we're doing it with humanity, making sure to look out for our schedules. There's my refrigerator again. I'm telling you, every 20 minutes. Sorry about that. I got to check on that. The humanity, our schedules, our students' schedules, our lives, our kids, our elders, etc. We're doing this with humanity. We're not going to put up with onerous directives from principals who are just trying to make a point or assert their power, or from local districts. We're not doing that. Not doing onerous directives. We're doing things based on this agreement. Okay, that's why we rushed to get this agreement so you could come back from spring break with some real guidelines here. And we're part of a movement. I mentioned at the beginning, we're working with statewide teachers unions against privatization and to make sure that if they come with state cuts, that we actually do a huge battle to prevent another 2008. You remember how horrible it was losing the colleague next door, cutting student programs, seeing students go without programs, furlough days. We're preparing for that fight. We're part of a movement on that. We're part of a movement of renters. We're part of a movement for youth. We're part of a national labor movement, building for a new society coming out of the COVID-19 crisis, and we're seen as leaders in that. Our strike went across the nation. Our strike shifted the national narrative around more investment in public schools, not privatized schools, and help the narrative around school funding. We put ourselves, you being on the picket line, put ourselves in that national leadership role, and now we are exerting that national leadership during a time of national crisis. So you are part of a movement. Know that and feel that. We're going to have area meetings on some areas are doing. Some UTLA areas are doing area meetings next week just to go over this agreement and really work with folks on how to make sure it breaks down at school sites. So chapter chairs will be going to that. We're also going to do area meetings on April 29th across the city to, again, support your chapter chairs. But remember, chapter chairs can't do this alone. Be a part of working with your chapter chair. Be a part of that contract action team, that chapter action team, that CAT team that helps your chapter chair. Reach out to your chapter chair right away and say, hey, what parts of this do we need to send a message on Monday? We're going to be doing ongoing communication, obviously. We're we're asking you all to have chapter meetings next week. Make sure you have a virtual chapter meeting, a UTLA meeting, just like you did at lunch, you know, in room 22 or whatever room it was that you used to do it. Have a virtual chapter meeting to make sure everybody has seen this and asserts their rights about it. So we're asking for you to do that the week of April 13th. And then chapter chairs will get support also from their areas that week of April 13th. And then the week of April 27th, there'll be more area meetings and more support for chapter chairs. I hope you are having a great break. Please take advantage of it. You're doing incredible work in unprecedented times. Take advantage of your break. If you're celebrating religious holidays, please have great religious holidays. You deserve it. You deserve it. And please make sure that you keep on asking questions and getting the information you need about this side letter. You were a part of getting this. And I'm going to sign off, but we love you. We support you. Use this agreement for our students, for our profession. And we're going to get through this. We absolutely will get through this. And so take care. Have a great afternoon, and we'll talk to you soon.